They took 437 photos on that trip. I counted. Every sunset, every poolside laugh, every candid moment carefully, framed and filtered, and posted online for the world to see. 437 photos, and I wasn't in a single one. Not because I wasn't there, because they decided, without telling me, that I wasn't worth remembering. My name is Diane, and I need to tell you something before I get into this story. I am not a dramatic person. I have never been the woman who makes scenes at dinner tables or sends passive-aggressive group texts at midnight. I am the woman who shows up. The one who drives 3 hours to help someone move, who remembers every birthday without a reminder, who quietly holds things together while everyone else takes the credit. That's exactly why what my family did to me hurt as deeply as it did. It wasn't just the photos. It never is it? The photos were just the moment the curtain finally fell. Let me take you back to the beginning. My parents retired 6 years ago and moved to a house in coastal South Carolina, a beautiful, sprawling place with a wraparound porch and a dock that stretched out over the water. My father had worked 35 years in manufacturing. My mother had given her entire adult life to raising 4 children while doing bookkeeping part-time. They deserved that house. They deserved every sunset they watched from that porch. There are 4 of us kids. Marcus, the oldest, who became a corporate attorney and married a woman named Serena who could make any room feel smaller just by walking into it. Then there's Patricia, 2 years younger than Marcus, who is beautiful and charming and has spent her entire life making sure everyone in every room knows it. Then there's me, Diane, and then there's Kevin, the youngest, who everyone has always protected and excused because he was, the baby and apparently always will be. I am the middle child in every sense that phrase implies. I was never the golden firstborn, never the dazzling second act, never the cherished youngest. I was the reliable one, the practical one, the one who handled things. When my mother had her hip surgery, I took 2 weeks off work to stay with her. When my father needed someone to manage his medical paperwork, after his heart procedure, I flew down and spent a weekend building him a binder system so detailed that his cardiologist actually complimented it. When Kevin's first marriage fell apart and he needed a place to stay, I gave him my guest room for 4 months without charging him a dime. I did all of this because I love my family. I genuinely do. Even now telling this story, I want you to understand that the love was real. The problem was that it was never returned in equal measure. The vacation was my mother's idea. She called it a family reunion trip and a full week at a beach resort on Hilton Head Island to celebrate my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. She said she wanted all 4 of her children there, plus their families. She wanted photos on the beach. She wanted dinners together. She wanted memories. I was so excited that I cried a little on the phone with her. I had been going through a difficult stretch. My marriage of 11 years had ended 14 months earlier. Not explosively, not with anyone's fault, just quietly and painfully the way some things die. My ex-husband, Thomas, and I had simply grown into 2 different people who didn't know how to love each other anymore. We had no children, which people always said made the divorce easier, as if losing your entire domestic life and the future you planned was somehow manageable without little faces to worry about. It wasn't easier. It was just a different kind of hard. So the idea of a week with my family, my mother's cooking, my father's bad jokes, my nieces and nephews shrieking across a beach, felt like something I genuinely needed. I booked the time off work 4 months in advance. I bought a new swimsuit. I had my hair done. Small things, but they tell you something about how much I was looking forward to it. I drove down to Hilton Head on a Sunday in July. 14 hours, alone in my car with podcasts and gas, station coffee, and the particular quiet of long solo, driving that lets your mind unspool. I arrived at the resort at 8:30 in the evening to find the rest of my family already there, and already at dinner. They had started without me. Traffic? Marcus said when I walked up to the table, not standing, not hugging me. Just the drive, I said. It's a long one. Serena gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Patricia was deep in conversation with my mother and barely looked up. Kevin waved. My father stood and hugged me, which I held on to a beat longer than I normally would have. I told myself it was fine. I was tired. They were already in vacation mode. I was just arriving late to a rhythm they'd already found. I told myself that for several days. The pattern revealed itself slowly, the way most cruelties do. It started with the group photo on the first full day. My father wanted everyone on the beach at 7 a.m. before the sun got too high. We all walked down together, Marcus and Serena and their 2 teenagers, Patricia and her husband David and their daughter Lily, Kevin and his girlfriend Britt, who I was meeting for the first time, my parents and me. A resort photographer had been hired. We assembled in the sand. "Okay, family," the photographer called out cheerfully. And then, without a word, without a glance in my direction, they arranged themselves into a configuration that had no space for me. Marcus and Serena anchored one side. Patricia and David took the other. Kevin and Britt slid in next to my parents at the center. The children kneeled in front. I was standing 4 feet to the left, holding my sandals, waiting to be waved in. I wasn't waved in. "That looks great, Serena," called out to the photographer. "Can we do a few more?" I stood there for 4 more shots. I kept waiting for someone to turn around. My mother was the only one facing my direction, and she looked at me for one brief moment, then looked back at the camera. I walked back to the resort alone. I spent 20 minutes in my room telling myself I had read it wrong. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe they assumed I didn't want to be in photos. I had mentioned years ago that I didn't love having my picture taken. Surely that was it, except it wasn't, because it happened again and again. At the waterfront dinner on Tuesday, group photo taken while I was in the restroom. I came back to the table to find everyone putting their phones away, laughing at the results. When I asked to see, Patricia tilted her screen toward me briefly. A beautiful photo of all 7 adults and 3 children, arranged perfectly. No space where I had been sitting. At the kayaking excursion on Wednesday, the guide offered to take a photo of everyone at the launch. I was climbing out of my kayak. By the time I reached the group, Patricia was already announcing that they had gotten a great one and there was no need for another. Thursday evening bonfire on the beach. Kevin asked Britt to take a photo of the family. I was sitting 3 feet away in a beach chair. He walked past me to position himself next to my father. By Thursday night, I had stopped telling myself it was accidental. I lay in my resort bed and stared at the ceiling and felt something I hadn't felt since the loneliest years of my childhood, that specific, suffocating invisibility of being in a room full of people who love each other and understanding, with absolute clarity that you are not included in that love, not in the same way, not with the same warmth. I thought about calling a friend. I thought about leaving. Instead, I opened my phone and looked at the family group chat, which had been buzzing all week with photos everyone was sharing with each other. Photo after photo after photo. I scrolled for 15 minutes. I was not in a single one. I didn't confront anyone. I know some of you might wonder why, and I want to explain that. It wasn't weakness. It was a calculation I've made my entire life. The recognition that in my family, when I express hurt, I am always the one who ends up apologizing. I have watched this dynamic play out for 4 decades. Diane is too sensitive. Diane takes things personally. Diane makes everything about herself. If I had walked into breakfast on Friday morning and said, "Why am I not in any of the family photos?" I know with complete certainty what would have happened. There would have been a collective lightening of the mood, a series of well-practiced deflections, and by evening I would somehow be the one who had ruined the vacation. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I helped my mother carry groceries back from the resort shop. I played card games with my niece Lily, who was 8 and wanted nothing more than a willing partner for Uno. I sat next to my father on the dock and talked about his garden. I maintained the performance of normalcy that my family had always relied on me to maintain, but inside something had shifted. Something had quietly, finally broken. Saturday was the last full day. My mother had arranged a formal anniversary dinner at the resort's main restaurant. Private dining room, set menu, the photographer back for a final round of portraits. She was glowing. 40 years. She deserved to glow. I put on a navy blue dress I had bought specifically for the trip. I curled my hair. I looked in the mirror and told myself to hold it together for one more night. We gathered in the lobby at 6:30. Everyone was dressed beautifully. Serena was in a floor-length cream gown that she had clearly planned for weeks. Patricia's daughters had matching floral dresses. My mother was in powder blue, and my father looked more handsome than I'd seen him in years. The hostess led us toward the private dining room. And then the maître d' approached my father with a particular expression, the careful, expectant look of someone managing a surprise. "Mr. Calloway," he said quietly, "your other guest has arrived. Shall I bring him through?" My father's face transformed into something I can only describe as pure joy. "Yes," he said. "Please, yes." I didn't understand what was happening. I looked at my mother, who had pressed her hand over her mouth. And then walking across the lobby of that resort restaurant was my father's brother, my Uncle Raymond. Raymond Calloway had lived in Vancouver for 22 years. He and my father had grown up in poverty together, had put each other through college by working back-to-back shifts, had been each other's best men, had gone through the deaths of both their parents side by side, and then life and geography and the particular drifting that happens to even the closest people had put an ocean of distance between them. Raymond had been at my wedding.
He had sent me flowers when Thomas and I divorced.
He was in every meaningful sense my favorite person in my extended family. He crossed the lobby, and my father grabbed him and held on, the way men of their generation rarely allow themselves to hold on, and there were tears. And then Raymond stepped back and looked around at all of us, and his eyes landed on me. "Diane," he said, and his voice carried something warm and deliberate. "There she is." He hugged me first. Not Marcus. Not Patricia, me. I watched my siblings' faces in that moment, and I saw something interesting. A flicker of recalibration. Because Raymond was not just my father's beloved brother. Raymond was also, as of 8 months ago, the newly appointed chairman of Calloway Merit Holdings, the private investment firm that my grandfather had founded and that my father had run for 15 years before retirement. The firm that Marcus had been angling to join as outside counsel for 3 years. The firm that Patricia's husband, David, had recently pitched for a major commercial real estate project. Raymond sat down next to me at the dinner table. He put his hand on mine and said quietly, "Your father told me you drove all this way alone. I hope they've been taking good care of you." There was something in his tone, a knowing quality. I looked at him and saw that the question wasn't entirely innocent. "It's been a good trip," I said carefully. He nodded slowly. "I'm sure it has." The dinner was beautiful. The food was extraordinary. My parents talked about 40 years of marriage, with the kind of honesty that makes you believe in something. Raymond told stories from their childhood that made everyone laugh until they were wiping their eyes. And then the photographer came back for the anniversary portraits. Raymond stood up. "I'd like to get one of the whole family," he announced pleasantly. "Everyone together, starting with this one," and he put his arm around me, gently, deliberately, positioning me at the center of the group, beside my parents. "Because Diane is the one who looks after all of you, and I want her front and center." Nobody said a word. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand. My father put his arm around my shoulder. Raymond stood on my other side. The photographer arranged us and said, "Beautiful. All right, whenever you're ready." Marcus cleared his throat and stepped in. Serena followed. Patricia moved forward, pulling David with her. Kevin came around from the back. All of them filled in around the core, around me, my parents, Raymond, and the flash went off and then went off again, and I stood in the center of my family, in my navy dress with my carefully curled hair, and felt something loosen in my chest that had been wound tight for longer than that week. After dinner, Raymond asked me to walk with him along the waterfront. The night was warm and the water was ink black, and the lights from the resort reflected in long, trembling lines across the surface. "Your father called me 3 months ago," Raymond said. "He was worried about you. He said you'd been going through a difficult time since the divorce, and he wanted someone to check in on you this week." He paused. "Then last night he called me again. He said he'd noticed something happening with the photos, and he was ashamed that he hadn't said something sooner." I stopped walking. "Your father sees more than you think he does," Raymond said. "He's not always good at saying things, but he sees." I didn't cry. I wanted to. I held it. "He asked me to come for the dinner," Raymond continued. But I want you to know the other thing too. He looked out at the water. I'm restructuring Callaway Merritt. I'm bringing in a director of client relations and operations. Someone I trust completely. Someone with proven loyalty and organizational talent and the kind of work ethic that doesn't require an audience. He looked at me. I've spoken to your firm about a potential transition. If you're interested. I stared at him. That's a significant offer, I managed. It's a significant person, he said simply. The next morning, my last morning at the resort, I came down to breakfast to find Patricia already at the table. Scrolling through the photos from the night before, she turned her phone to show me. There I was, center frame, navy dress, surrounded by family, my father's arm around me and Raymond on my left. She had posted it to her Instagram at midnight with the caption, "Family is everything." She didn't say anything about the week. Neither did Marcus. Neither did Kevin. That's how these things work in families like mine. The acknowledgement happens sideways or not at all. But my mother stopped me in the hallway as I was loading my car. "I'm sorry," she said. Just that. 2 words, but she held my gaze when she said them, which was its own kind of courage from a woman of her generation who has never found apology easy. "I know, Mom," I said. She hugged me for a long time. Then she cupped my face in both hands the way she used to when I was small. And she said, "You are seen. Diane, don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." I drove home 14 hours, with the windows down and the music, loud and something different humming, in my chest, and not bitterness, not the heavy residue of the week, but something lighter, something that felt tentatively and carefully, like the beginning of a new direction. 3 months later, I accepted Raymond's offer and gave notice at my firm. Marcus sent me a professional congratulations email, formal, a little stiff, exactly 3 sentences long. Patricia texted me a string of celebratory emojis. Kevin called and genuinely seemed happy for me, which I chose to believe. And my father sent me a handwritten letter. 4 pages talking about watching me grow up and the pride he felt and the regret he carried and the hope he had. I've read it 11 times. I keep it in my desk drawer. The 437 photos from that vacation trip are somewhere in the cloud, carefully filtered and posted and preserved. And in the 438th, the one that Raymond made happen, I am standing right in the center, exactly where I belong. Here's what I know now. The people who quietly exclude you are always counting on you to quietly accept it. The moment someone with real love and real authority decides to put you back in the center of the frame, you find out very quickly who was choosing to forget you and who was simply waiting for permission to remember. Don't wait for the permission. You were always worth remembering.